Hello, everyone, and welcome to the September 19th Cloud Custodian Community Meeting. We've got the meeting notes shared, and I'm going to drop them into the meeting chat also, so that it gets recorded for you all and for the transcripts. And we can start going right through the agenda items. If anyone's got an introduction, want to say hi, or has anything pressing to cover, feel free to jump in now. All right. And then beyond the intros, Python 3.7. I know the past couple meetings we've had, we've noted that Python 3.7 that we were going to drop support for it. It was end of life. We were moving on past it, and it looks like with the last release that is true now. We are 3.8 plus. There is an issue open where we talked about it. Issue still open. We may, and Kapil or other folks may have comments on this. We can probably drop this, close this one. But yeah, as of the most recent release, we're 3.8 plus. Has anyone run into issues with that? Questions, concerns, or anything to add? No. Cool. I think we did get one question in Slack where someone wasn't seeing a new release, and it looked like it was because they were in an environment that was 3.7. It didn't look like any kind of a blocking issue though. And yeah, we got a question today about mailer, but as Kapil's mentioned there, that looked like a config issue because we should be, just if I was following that thread, we should be defaulting to 3.10 on any new lambdas, right? So that shouldn't be an issue. Okay. So then I did have some PRs and issues to bring up, but before I just roll ahead into the things that I'm thinking about, I want to give other folks a chance to drop anything. Any issues or PRs you'd like to talk through? All right, then. I'm going to launch, open up a couple here that I've seen, and I think Kapil, you had commented on some of this stuff. Oh, someone's autopilot is taking notes. That's okay, autopilot. So this was the way I took a little bit of a look at this one, and it looks like someone is trying to make two different changes to the metrics filter that both seem at least partially S3 related, but might have other further ranging impacts. It looks like one, which I think is an issue we've identified before, that if you're going to fetch bucket metrics, even though S3 is a global namespace, the buckets are regional, and you need to fetch metrics from a specific region. So this is trying to make sure that we pull metrics from the right region. That seems like a reasonable thing. It's just where do we put that logic? And my first thought was similar to Kapil's, that this would probably be subclassing in S3 because it's such an S3 specific feature. But I don't know if anybody has any questions, concerns, anything to add about that.
Yeah, I mean, we just did this for SNS, and the original implementation was trying to put it in the base. Like, we generally want to direct type-specific behavior into a subclass.
Cool. Okay, yeah, so that looked like that would be something we would put in under S3 just because, yeah, it isn't, I can't think of other resources that need that sort of behavior, but it does seem worth having for S3. The other related change, which the contributor here linked to, was another one about trying to retrieve all dimensions. And this again seems, I'm sure it comes up in other resource types, but this is for S3 metrics like bucket size or number of objects. There's a dimension that is related to the storage type. So for number of objects, the type is just all storage types, and that's fine. For bucket size, you need to go look at all these different storage classes. So like Glacier, Standard, infrequently accessed, all that. So if you want to use the metrics filter to say, what is my total size, you sort of have to look at all the different storage types that you have and then sum everything together. And this PR is trying to do that in that very focused case. But I know we've also had other requests that we're looking at using get metric data under the hood so that we could use math search expressions and things like that. So I'm just wondering if it's worth adding in this retrieve all dimensions, this additional piece to the policy language that then we'll need to maintain for backward compatibility, or taking the bigger bite of using get metric data under the hood and making those more flexible math expressions possible.
I mean, I would say that get metric data is independent of this, and we should consider that separately. And as for this, I think I'd almost want, instead of trying to go fetch dimensionality, it feels like we would be better off maybe letting the user specify what dimensions, but I'm not entirely clear. Yeah, I'm not spun up enough to really comment on this.
That's fair. So that would be instead of specifying one dimension, we take a list of dimensions and then you list anything that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, there is a catch-all all storage. There is a catch-all all storage types. Like,
yeah, the part that's weird with that, and that's just a CloudWatch specific thing, is that all storage types applies to one metric, and then for bucket size bytes, you don't, like, all storage types doesn't give you anything. You have to go to all the individual storage types, which is like a little tedious.
So I mean, we recently had a PR on metrics, at least specific to AWS, to do some client-side summing if we were doing it across multiple periods.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, so you're thinking we can apply the same logic to multiple dimensions?
Possibly. Again, I'm
Maybe.
not really. I haven't spent up
Yeah.
on that PR.
Yeah. Okay. So that's anyone else who has been using the metric filter. If any of this sparks any concerns or excitement or fear, anything, either feel free to take a look and comment on these, or if anything comes to mind now, let it fly. Otherwise, is there anything else that folks have thought of? Any other topics, issues, or PRs to bring up? From the last meeting, I was thinking about the release. I know Kapil and Pratish, you went through and did that one. There was a lot more automation that time. Anything worth pulling back out of that, or did that just go smoothly and better and all good news?
Yeah, I didn't see any problems as such, and it was pretty solid flow-wise.
Nice. That's good. That's no news is good news. That's when a release goes out and there's nobody yelling. That's nice.
Yeah.
And then Kapil, I've seen some of the C7 and left PRs coming through, issues or PRs. Anything worth bringing up from any of that work?
Especially just making it super robust, being able to run setting policies against Terraform, dealing with a lot of the sort of real world nitty-gritty that's out there. But it seems to be progressing well. I guess I did have one top of the house agenda item. We are looking at doing a Cloud Custodian Day. I believe the first week of November, roughly. And there'll be a call for papers and other announcements related to that later this week. And just want to give folks here a heads up.
All right, thanks. So details Details coming soon.
Just out of curiosity, is that physical or virtual? Or
Virtual
hybrid?
event.
Virtual
It
event?
is. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
And that's just going to be later this year sometime?
I think we're looking at November 1st, I think, as far as, so I think that's the week before KubeCon in Chicago. But the intent was to make it virtual to make it easy to attend.
Cool. That's cool. Sounds good. Hello, David.
Hey there.
We were just going through some of the PR's issues. You have anything specific to bring up? You can let it go. Do not. Robert, I do see you want to. Is there anything related to Oracle that's worth highlighting, bringing up?
No, just that I guess I'm just joining for listening, really. And there was a comment, I guess, an issue raised just on an authentication method using an instance resource. So we're looking at that. So we may have it should be a small change. So we'll put that as a PR hopefully later this week.
Nice. Sounds good. Thanks. All right. And then one other one, the last thing that I can think of that is probably a little bit wild and maybe easy to shoot down is we've had a few requests over time for this sort of vague heading of dynamically populating tag values. And this is somebody wants to tag resources and they don't have an explicit set of values. They want to be able to look something up that varies based on the resource. So we've had a few different types, a few different flows under this heading. So one is tagging things like tagging an S3 bucket with the name or something, because you need tags for some kind of downstream processing, or pulling some deeper. There's an example in the top of the issue here about pulling the AMI from an EC2 instance and using that, or you doing a little bit further down the road would be things like use a property of a resource and then use that as a key to look up a set of values in S3 or something like that. There's a whole bunch of flexibility. I'm trying to figure out what the most useful first step is that doesn't shoot us in the foot long term. And so the way that Azure and GCP do this is there's a separate sort of lookup where it assumes that you're going to be doing a tag action per resource. On the AWS side, we tend to use bulk tagging wherever we can. And so committing to one API call per resource seems like it could be a lot. If there's a chance to pool those, we want to try to take advantage of it when we can. So one idea here is I was thinking that we could use resource as sort of a like a runtime variable, the way that we use something like now. And then where with now we can use a format string that says something like +2D, and it'll take today's date and add 2 days to it. And it's kind of like hacking around the Python format string syntax. And I was wondering if we could do something like that to look up, to use James path expressions against a resource. Or if that's so unintuitive or crazy that we should not do that, or if someone has a better idea. Does that trigger any reflex love, hate, confusion questions?
Sorry, can you run through that one more time? Okay.
Yeah, probably. The idea is if we want to take some property of a resource and use that and set a tag based on a resource-specific property. Self. Oh, self. Yeah, self's a good keyword too. That's a good call. So if we were gonna, the silly example that I was thinking about here is if you wanted to tag an instance with its state, which doesn't really. Why do we need format template versus the key expression? There is so part of this is because one of the one of the future requests that has come up is looking out in, let's say if I have a file out in S3 that maps, that says, I've got environment tags on my resources, and I want to be able to set some other tag based on the environment. So I want to do a lookup. Then how do I, within a tag action, look into S3 and say, look up each resource's environment tag, or some tag that could be repeated across multiple resources, but is not the same everywhere, and say, look what another tag's value should be based on that. This is a little hand wavy, which is why I went with the sillier but simpler example of using an instance state as a tag. Maybe this is tough to talk through. Kapil, how are you saying that we would be able to use a key expression? I guess within the action here would be okay if we rolled out the S3 case. So you're thinking like Azure and GCP do it, where there's like a separate type?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that I've thought through all the use cases here. I did want to wave off on state as a keyword, because there's definitely been a request to store like mark for op and mark for op into non-tag stores, like state stores, in which case we might be like doing tagging into like a different data store, effectively like some serverless KV store. In which case, like having this name state, or maybe the expression here is from, but the delta on whether or not it's a resource-set expression, I don't see why that matters for the external lookup or not, because you still want some form of, like, you still need to do like a from, or with a value from sort of syntax to get to it. I mean, the top level, at least with the bulk APIs, is still grouping by the underlying rendered value to do the bulk on the smaller populations.
Yeah, that part seems worth doing, so we can still group. Okay, so I just need some better examples to make this more useful to talk through. I don't want to hold a whole meeting worth of folks hostage to talk through it. It is a bit hand wavy, but I know the dynamic tagging idea has come up a few times. So if folks have specific use cases or things that you're specific flows you want to see, then either chiming in on that draft PR, or the maybe more useful this issue with the dynamic tags, because we've had things like, I remember this one came in a while back, looking to pull up like a portion of an ARN and set that as a separate tag. So I guess just making sure that people know if you have a use case like this, there's an issue, and we can try to figure out something that serves all the use cases, or many of them, the ones that we need to target.
So is it basically just pulling resource properties and converting them to tags?
Yeah, that's part of it. That seemed like the most straightforward first piece would be to do that, where there's no external lookup, but you're still using a property of a resource to tag itself. Yeah. Have you had a need for that sort of thing, or no?
I can see the utility in it. I can't think of something off the top. I mean, it actually, yeah. I mean, if you're collecting resources at scale, so you have like a repository, a bunch of resources, you're collecting, say, everything enterprise wide, I can see the utility in doing that, because then you wouldn't have to make additional API calls to collect other information if it was tagged. That's one use case I could think of where we might be interested in it. Were you talking about also being able to do like cross resources? Like if you wanted to tag EC2 something, but being able to talk to another resource outside of EC2 potentially?
Yeah, that one,
Hmm.
I think he'll mention that in one here. Yeah, there's this copy related tags. So that
Hmm.
one is in there where you can tag a resource with something that comes from a property of another resource that it's tied to. So like tag a volume with information from its snapshot or something like that.
Yeah,
Or
we
tag a
use
snapshot
that
with something
one.
from volume. Yeah, so those kinds of things, those cross resource ones, we have I mean that's pretty much those are helpful. Yeah. This is more just within one resource or with an eye toward using a resource property to key an external lookup. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I think you're right. The copy related tags tends to be what people need more often. So if you don't need this sort of thing, then that's great. That's easier. We could do it today.
Mhm.
All right. Well, I think those are the only ones that came up here. If there's anything else, yeah, if anyone has any other, oh, sorry, CRT, David, what oh, copy related text. I'm thinking CRT screens. All right, sounds good. Does anyone have anything else to bring up? Or, otherwise, we can look to close out.
Anyone who wanted to highlight any PRs they wanted to bring to attention?
No, guess not. All right, I'm gonna shut down the recording. We'll get it posted. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.